So let's return to that news that a man with learning difficulties who'd been tormented by gangs of yobs for years was found dead last night after confronting a group of youths. David Askew collapsed in his garden in Hattersley in Greater Manchester.
Well, the details of his torment emerged as police in England and Wales were criticised for the way they deal with complaints about antisocial behaviour. We can discuss this further with Roger Graef, who's a criminologist, and Nathan John, who is a youth worker here in London. Thank you both for coming in very much. To you, first of all, Nathan, why do people behave in this way? Why are they going around tormenting people who are clearly in difficulties? A lot of the victims have got learning difficulties.
It's a difficult question. The work that I tend to do, I try to look at the individual and look at their circumstances, and there are a range of different reasons. Sometimes it's their environment, their home life. The parents on drugs, the parents are just not around, don't care about them, so they can do as they like. Sometimes it's being led astray by someone in a group that is kind of like the leader who leads them to get involved in these activities. Some of them is just having time on their hands, nothing better to do. And it's very unfortunate. I mean, I've been very moved by this story, and my condolences go out to the Askew family. And it's terrifying. I'm terrified that this has happened, but sadly, it's happened before, and it will continue to happen unless we see a change.
And Roger Graef, it's very difficult for the police to actually pin down what's going on, often, isn't it? I mean, with this case, they were on the case. They had CCTV cameras, but the kids behaving in this way are often quite canny.
Well, that's true, but there's also this question of group responsibility, and the way the criminal justice system works, they want to know who was the single person and who did what to whom, as it were. And that's very difficult for them. There are a couple of issues. I agree with what Nathan said. We did a film for BBC One last summer on antisocial behaviour in Oxford, of all places, and there was picking on handicapped people, disabled people, almost routinely. It is a kind of cruel sport. It is actually that, for kids with far too much energy and not enough activity. It's one of the most brutal and curious features of bureaucracy about this stuff, that youth clubs shut on the weekends and during school holidays because they've got contracts with the Department of Education. And not all of them, of course, but most of them, means that there really are kids hanging around trying to show off to each other, picking on the weakest members. They do it in normal groups. They put in, it's one of those terrible features of human nature. So unless we intervene, and the police, by the way, cannot just be made responsible for this, it's the community itself has got to say, you are our kids and we want you to engage with us. We are not just scared of you. We're going to work with you. We're going to have fun with you. We're going to, it's the distancing of teenagers as stigmatized and demonized that kind of is a self-perpetuating problem.
Nathan, I mean, is it down to the police? Because the police have been criticised by this report today, but I mean, is it youth clubs, is it neighbours who need to be confronting this problem perhaps more and not just leaving it to the police?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Roger said. Something I would mention later on. I mean, in this case, the police have been seen to actually be doing quite well. The mother has made a statement saying how well the police have worked with them. So in this case,
but still couldn't do enough.
Still couldn't do enough, because what can the police do by themselves? You know, what can the community do by themselves? It takes everyone to get involved, from the parents to the police, members of the community. There need to be activities for young people to do. There need to be individuals that these young people can engage with, who they feel they can relate to, who they feel they can look up to, you know, aspire to be. At the moment, maybe because we all got our problems with the credit crunch, I don't know, but doors are closed, you know. We don't have the community sense that we used to have. Sometimes I watch documentaries from like the 50s and the 60s and look how England, Britain mobilised over the war, and then everyone came together post the war and built Britain back up to what it once was. I don't see that anymore.
But is it just that these sort of youths are bored, or is it that they're getting a sadistic pleasure out of what they've been doing here, and even if you laid on activities for them and more activities, they maybe still do it?
It's a bit of both. You know, in every bunch of fruit you'll find a rotten apple sometimes, you know. Unfortunately, that's the case. But what tends to happen is those who are the bad ones, those who are sadistic because of things that happened earlier in their life, tend to be the ones who are the leaders. And everyone else is just followers. Everyone else is, that person's got charisma. You know, if you look at what a leader is, the characteristics, you've got a lot of these individuals who are leaders, but they're just doing inappropriate things, illegal things. And that's what I try to work with those individuals, to get them to do the right things, because I understand that they have influence over their peers. And there's no point trying to kick them out or push them to one side. You have to use them and see what you can do to get them to help you.
Nathan was talking there, Roger, about our kind of behind their own closed doors, and it is very difficult to rise up and deal with this. Have you come across many incidents where people are actually taking it on themselves in their own communities?
Well, it's very interesting, this, because there is a range. When you deal with the really cold-hearted, sadistic kids who do intimidate the other kids, then the weaker ones will go along with it just to be protected by the authority of that demon. But quite a lot of the kids who do antisocial behavior of a less violent kind are actually just bored and restless. And one of the things that I've found in use of something called restorative justice and community mediation is that old people who are scared by kids hanging around in an underpass or at a bus stop actually the kids didn't realize how scary they were. They were just having fun. And when in Leicester this happened, the police actually sat down with both lots, and it took quite a long time. The kids said, well, we're really sorry, we weren't trying to scare you, and they changed where they hung out, and they said hello instead of just, you know, putting up their collars.
But that's different then, though, isn't it, from actually targeting somebody in their own home
absolutely.
and repeatedly
No,
attacking
that
the home.
particular kind of cruelty is against the law, and that is criminal assault. You know, there are people responsible, and the problem with the justice system is you've got to know who did it, and then the question of being a witness means that you risk being attacked for being a witness, and that is regarded in some communities as worse than the original offence. There's a problem there. There's a moral problem about witnessing and going to court for this stuff that undermines the effectiveness both of the police and the criminal justice system. It's got to be down to the mothers and indeed individuals to say, look, I'm going to pay attention to you, not just because you're bad, but because you're a kid.
Nathan, I mean, do you think antisocial behaviour, we talk a lot and we highlighted it today with this story from Greater Manchester. I mean, anecdotally, from what you see, is it a problem that is as bad as it was? Is it getting better? Are ASBOs working? I mean, what's your sense?
But there's always been an element of antisocial behaviour. You know, when I was
Probably always will be. I mean,
yeah, when I was in my teens, there were times when I was antisocial. So, as Roger said, when kids got time on their hands, nothing better to do, they are going to get up to do things that to adults might seem intimidating or inappropriate. And I think what we need to do, as we've said already, we just need to provide more positive activities. We need to parents need to make sure they know where their children are going, first of all, who they hang around with. Parents need to really get more involved. And I think the adults in the community do need to stand up more and be more visible. I remember, again, being young, if we saw adults, if we were doing something that we shouldn't have been doing, we would have stopped because the adult presence was there. Now I'm not sure if I really see that presence anymore. I mean, the neighbours took notes of everything that was going on. I'm sure the neighbours must have known who the perpetrators were. I'm not sure why the police couldn't arrest those individuals. I know in front of the cameras, they cover themselves, but I'm sure once they move away from the cameras, the hoods are down. Is it really that hard? Can't the police just be a bit smarter in their tactics, use more technology? I don't know.
Just a quick final thought from you,
Okay,
Roger. I know
well,
you wanted
there
to
is
come in
this
there.
notion, it's a very interesting one, it's called reintegrative shaming. And when you get young people who've done really bad things, they don't actually care much about the courts, but they care about their peers, their parents, their uncles, and so on. And if you get the community saying, do you know what you've done? Do you know what the consequences of what you've done are? They never think about it, and that seems to work. That's what I would see as the really effective tool here.
Interesting to talk to you both. Roger Graef, thank you very much, and thank you, Nathan Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you.